Fourth week of Advent, the fourth candle has been lit. Christmas is right around the corner, and my daughter is busy practicing Hark, the Herald Angels Sing on the piano to play for her grandparents when they come for Christmas. I don't know if you've noticed, but Hark, the Herald Angels Sing is a worship and evangelism song for angels. Has it occurred to any of you how much of YouTube or of the internet in general is worship and evangelism? Just watch as you interact with social media and websites and whatever's out there, how much of it has to do with what's of value and telling other people about that, sharing that value with other people. Obviously not with respect to God. It's not a lot of worship of God, the God of Jesus, but with other things. Let me read to you something from C.S. Lewis, Reflection on the Psalms. This is a chapter called A Word About Praising. I was given this in college, and I really liked it then. It took me many years to actually read the book. But here on the second page of this essay, A Word About Praising, he says, God is that object to admire which is simply to be awake, to have entered the real world. I love that phrase. Not to appreciate which is to have lost the greatest experience, and in the end, to have lost all. Hey everybody, welcome to the Sanctus Forum. I am Michael Stewart Robb right here, and we are doing Pensies. We're doing Pensies in Advent, but we're still kind of continuing a series that I started in November on the shadow side of spirituality, and this is the sixth video in that series. And one of the things that I've been discussing is this idea of evangelism being congruent with Western spirituality, and so often it's not, and I think that's why it doesn't seem right that people who are involved in Western spirituality should be doing it, because it just doesn't match. And one of the reasons why it doesn't match is it doesn't come out of who we are, and doesn't come out of what we value. And that really is what worship is. Now, to make sense of this, you kind of have to step back and think about what Western spirituality really is and has been from the beginning. And think of it like an art school. You're involved in Western spirituality, you go to church, or, I don't know, read books that are connected with it, or do practices that are connected with it, meet other people who are connected with it. And what you're doing, it's kind of like going to art school or film school or studying literature or architecture or something like that. And through this, you are learning to make sense of what's good and what's bad. So it's kind of like the criticism part of art school or of film school or whatever, where you're sort of saying, oh, that was a really good film. That was a really good, whatever, piece of artwork, architecture, and so on. It's kind of no secret that the Western spirituality thinks of God as the most valuable, the most good thing that's out there, thing that's worth your attention and worth being in relationship with somehow. And the point of this is to enter the real world, as C.S. Lewis says. Whoops, I dropped my pen. We enter the real world when we do that, because we actually have found the thing that is really worth our attention. And that's why we have church services, which are very often worship services, and yet not really. I think it's better put that they're more like training for worship services. We so often don't quite get it right, and I don't know if you've ever been in a church service, a worship service, and thought, I'm not really doing this. This isn't really working here. And that's because you probably aren't doing it right. And probably very few of us are doing it very well. The point is, it's like being at art school. You're learning. We're learning to get an interest or to understand what's valuable and why it's valuable. I mean, not just with respect to God, but with respect to all of human life. This is something that I think we really don't quite get about Western spirituality. We think it's just sort of all given to us right at the beginning, and we all of a sudden know how things work. And again, with respect to what to worship and what not to worship and what to evangelize and what not to evangelize, we think, oh, well, we'll just get that within a week. The connection here between worship and evangelism is just that evangelism is so often, and especially when it's natural for just human beings, is an expression of worship. So you have worship as a sort of appreciation or admiration of a certain thing. Say you've seen an excellent film, and then just naturally you go and you share that with other people. There's a kind of a completion to your appreciation for that film by just telling other people who you think might like it. And really, in Western spirituality, it is just the same. You have this sort of worship, experience is probably the wrong word, but you become aware of what's good, and then by nature you share that with other people. And I think practically with respect to evangelism in this kind of way, the most important place where we need to do that is within our close circle of people. Not even our next door neighbors or people in our city, but just the people that we live with, our children, our partners, our parents, our roommates, and just telling them about the good things with respect to God, Western spirituality, that we have experienced and that we now understand and know the value of. Now, here there's kind of a caution, and I think we can push too much for this kind of natural connection between worship and evangelism, because the fact is, we kind of meet people who are rather disinterested in certain kinds of things. Like my kids are disinterested in certain kinds of food. And when I experience them, say, at a restaurant, I maybe naturally share it with my wife because I know she has very similar affinities for certain things. I don't naturally share that with my kids. Sometimes I take a slightly different approach with my kids, at least because I'm their father and I'm trying to help them figure out what's good and bad, but it's not as natural. And the same goes for if you see a good film, you don't necessarily share that with everybody, and it wouldn't really be appropriate. I read a really good book this year called Phenomenology, which is a philosophy book by Walter Hoppe. And there are some people who I told about this book. I told them about this book immediately, as soon as I realized how good it was. But there's a lot of people, like probably most of you, I probably wouldn't get the idea of talking about that book because I think, well, it's probably not your thing, philosophy. So there's a naturalness to it, and yet there's a kind of, there's no point in forcing things down people's throats. And that really is the same with God and Western spirituality. There are people who have expressed disinterest in some of these things, and it just doesn't do any good to try to pry their eyes open and make them stare at them. It's just what it is. So that is it for me today, and probably it for Pensées in 2021. Who knows? It's the end, at least for this little series on the shadow side of Western spirituality. And I will probably see you next year, 2022. Lots of exciting things coming out in the Sanctus Forum and with Sanctus. So sign up for that almost monthly newsletter to learn about more. Follow us on Instagram, which is not a great place. Not the best Instagram channel out there, but, at least you get something. And then I will be in touch and see you then. Bye. next chapter. It's dumb.